Welcome to the Tearing It Up podcast. I'm your host, Taryn. We'll be tearing it up, tearing it down, and tearing it apart, dissecting all things related to those who deviate from the standard. From leaders of their industry to leaders of mediocrity, and maybe a gear review or two thrown in. We shoot the shit and let the conversations flow, so if that's not your style, this may not be for you. Otherwise, listen in. Hope to light a fire in you somehow. Awesome. Okay. So we are so excited to have another guest on the show. Today we have Charlotte from the ski retreat. And I'm just really excited to share her story because we met a few years ago over the gram. I can't remember off the top of my head of how I stumbled upon you, but we got in contact and you were doing these all women's ski retreats. You were going to be coming to Tahoe, and we chatted about me maybe doing some yoga and or like a fitness class before the group went out to ski. And when you were in Tahoe, I was out of town back in Washington, but I connected you with Andrew's brother, who was a chef at the time, and he ended up being the private chef for that weekend retreat. And then it was a couple months later, you're going to be back in Tahoe. And that's when I was going to actually do the class, but it rained like all that April, it felt like. And I think you ended up canceling that Tahoe retreat because the skiing was just not ideal. So it was late in the season and not the best conditions. And I think that was in 2018. So and then I've just kept following along with the ski retreat for the last few years, and then we got in touch again as you were telling me that you were in Tahoe and we were going to the same women's event, the Wild Women event that was at RMU in Truckee that a couple gals I know helped put on the Truckee chapter. And so it was so cool to be able to meet up with you in person, because actually I don't think we ever got to meet in person before that, and it felt like we had, because I met you years ago and like I said, just followed along. And so it was great to be able to sit down and talk to you and find out that you are like here in Tahoe now full time and just ready to kind of put the gas pedal on for the ski retreat. So
heck yeah.
So Charlotte, just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and we'll just start getting into really the thick of it all and how the ski retreat even came to be for you, because as most of us, we have another job first, and then our, something we create becomes hopefully or ideally or maybe like our full-time job. So we'll just talk about how it all started and where you're at today and where the future is.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for having me. And this is really exciting. And I'm excited to share always about the ski retreat, but also a big part of the ski retreat that you'll hear is, women supporting other women. And so when it comes down to sharing experiences and learnings and even tactical stuff on how, I've built what I've built, hopefully that can help other people. And I know I've learned a lot from other people who have built amazing companies, organizations, products, you name it. And so I'm always just so inspired and grateful from women who've done that, been on that journey, and who've been gracious and open to sharing, right? And I think what you both are doing is amazing in that way. So thank you. But I'm from Jackson, California, which is a small rural town. So I grew up, and my home ski mountain is Kirkwood. That's where I learned to ski when I was 2. And pretty much my whole life I've lived this life of 2 dreams. One is this boss lady dream where I'm I want to be a CEO. I want to, crush it. I want to have this crazy career. And then the other half of me is I just want to be a ski bum. I just want to live in nature, so I've always had that conflict, but I feel from that conflict is where the ski retreat was born. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up, in that small rural town, went to school on the coast at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, which is a great fit for me. Their motto is learn by doing. And so it's really all about just doing something. Don't theorize about it, just go out there and do the thing. And to me, I really believe that's how anyone gets where they are, right? We can think and think and think in circles, but it's just just do something, and then you can change and iterate over time.
I love that so much. And I think that is something that Amber and I resonate with so much, because I'm definitely a learner of doing like the kinetic feel. I need to do something for it to stick into my brain, and really, really stay past, the 5 minutes of what I just read of like the instructions of how to put something together. And so that's really cool that that's Cal Poly's mission as well. I never knew that. I know a couple people have gone, but never dug in that deep. So that's awesome that you
Yeah.
found a school that kind of supported those views.
Yeah, and I think it was symbolic or whatever you want to call it because I didn't realize that when I joined it, but by the end, it became a part of my DNA. And
Mhm.
so it's really cool. And then I went off to start a career in tech at startups in the Bay Area after that. And that's kind of where I've been since then. So I've done sales and marketing in both in startups in the Bay Area and successful ones, not successful ones, which is its own learning experience in itself. And I definitely take the learnings from that into what I do with the ski retreat. Luckily, I have that experience. And so it's been a really cool journey overall. But I will say, starting something on the side when you're in a startup is hard. I
Wow.
remember when I first was starting the ski retreat, there were a lot of tears
Oh
because
my
I just
God.
felt
Yeah.
so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But I definitely was just called to do this because it's something that I loved. And like anything in life, you go through this really hard patch of time when you know that there's growth or change on the other side of it. And that's what has to keep you going. And don't get me wrong, I had a lot of support in a lot of different areas, which I think helped me get there. But yeah, it was definitely tough, but it was that passion that kind of kept me going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You made it. You're on the other side, right?
We'll see about that.
On the way still, you're
On the
like
way.
you can kind of
Definitely a
see
dream.
the other side, at least a glimmer of the other side, instead of being at the very bottom of the valley. Like you're like, there it is.
Yeah.
There's something shining.
I will say this year was a bit of a tipping point for me, but we can build up to that point, and I didn't realize it until it sort of hit me in the face where I was like, okay, there's been a tipping point for me mentally, emotionally when it comes to the balance between my career that I've had for so long and then starting something new, which is the ski retreat, which is what I'm so passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you actually like start the ski retreat? What year was it?
It was 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so kind of like fall, started it late, right before the season almost. I started working on it over summer and then sort of launched it in October with like this janky Google website and like a couple postcards.
Well, that goes
uh,
back to exactly what you said, the mission, right? Like just do it. And so many people want everything to be perfect. I've gone through this with the hundreds of ideas I've had for things of like, I mean, I wanted to start a podcast for a very, very, very long time. And out of all the things I've done, this is, the last thing that I did. I started like a full business before I started the podcast on the thought of like, well, I just have to do it. But for the podcast, for some reason, was much harder for me to be like, just start talking and recording and kind of let it grow as it goes, because you're already going to start small with a small following with any business, right? So you have the room and opportunity to grow and find your audience and your crowd and your people. So like just doing it, you just starting a little website and some postcards, it's like, yep, well, here we go.
yeah, for me, it's always been these anchor points that drive me forward that I can work backwards from. So when I first did that janky website, I knew I was working on another website, but I had this get together I was going to where you kind of had to be somewhat of a founder or entrepreneur of something to go to this. And I was like, well, I need something to show for it. And so I would like threw up that, page and then had these postcards so I could give out. So that was really step one because I didn't want to come empty handed when I went to this gathering. And then I wanted to, how there's those ski movie premieres that happen and they travel around different cities.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to go there. I had an idea. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to plan my first retreat. So I want to like hand out these postcards to all the women at this, at this premiere, this TGR, movie premiere. And so I did that and it actually drummed up some interest as well. And so it really all kind of rolled from there once I had the idea
Mm-hmm.
and once I knew what I wanted to do with it. So it's funny to think back on that. I actually haven't thought about that in a little while until before this podcast. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like cringeworthy, the beginning stages of things. And I mean, I think about that even with this. I'm like, oh, we're gonna listen to like our first episodes and be like, oh my God, like what were we
Well,
doing? But
if it's not, then you're not doing it right.
yeah, exactly. So in 2018 you started the ski retreat. What though made you want to do, like, decide it was going to be an all women's thing? Were you feeling like you didn't have that yourself, like a group of women to go out and do things with, or you did have that? Like in my experience with all the women's groups I've been in, I didn't have a lot of women to do things with, but I had a lot of support in doing the activities that I did, like wrestling, for instance, like very male dominated, especially when I did it. There was like hardly any girls, but I had a huge support system. And as I started to get older and see women in these more masculine like sports or in anything and not having support, I was like, wow, I can't believe all these rad ladies trying to do the things just aren't getting support from anybody. So I joined a lot of these groups and got really behind a lot of the movements because I had the support. And so now I wanted to be the person giving that support to people who didn't have it. So that's what I wonder about you and with the ski retreat. Like, did you have women to ski with since you started at a young age and you were like, I want to give this to people who don't have it? Or was it a void that you were filling?
It really was multifaceted. And to be honest, some of it was really selfish. So I was always very inspired by, I always had, I think within startups, you're obviously not, you're around a lot of entrepreneurs, but it's a different world completely. And so I was becoming more interested in female entrepreneurs, especially, and them having different types of businesses than like the tech world. And so I started looking at, Create, Cultivate, and listening to podcasts like Second Life, which is about women who are on a career journey and then they change to another career, which is mostly them starting their own business. And I just became really like fascinated with women who are taking their own journey. Mm-hmm. And I also have to give a credit. I went on a yoga retreat called Yoga for Bad People, which is a really cool business. And I just remember being like, how do I get this life? I want to have my own thing. I want to step out of the corporate workforce. What would that look like? And I'm like, I love yoga, but I don't really want to be a yoga instructor. So I'm like, what would it be? And it kind of like hit me. I was like, duh, skiing's been my passion for years. And I've planned ski trips every season for my girlfriends, for my guys and girlfriends, for my work. I'm always, the planner of all these big trips. And I'm like, why don't I do those for just anyone? And at first it wasn't going to be women only. That came later. I kind of was like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to start this retreat. We're going to do these cool things. But as I started really thinking about it and thinking what the weekend would look like, I had another little epiphany where I was like, oh, this needs to be women only. And it was at that point when the branding and the meaning behind it really came to fruition. And so that's where, I like the website kind of explains, we start with yoga, we have connection, the first conversations are really important, which is like when you first have a conversation with someone, and that vulnerability and that willingness to be open and learn about other people. Then, of course, there's those special perks like the private chef, and we bring in, we do creative activities, bring in someone like an art instructor, and we do wine tasting or stuff like that sometimes. So it, to me, felt really right. And then it was very aligned with the women supporting women sort of mission that I feel like I've always been on in that way. So skiing is funny because it's the anchor of it all, but it's really a lot more than about the skiing when it comes to the connection and growth and everything. And what's so cool is these women who come on the trip, they become friends and they go off and do their own trips, and they've made those connections with people, which is so cool. So, but I will say, yes, a part of it is, most women learn to ski from a boyfriend or their dad. Mm-hmm. I did. And it's not always the most compassionate environment or experience, right? It's kind of like, just hook it, you could do it. It's like, okay, maybe I don't want to, which on one hand is great, right? Because you're challenging yourself more, but on the other hand can be severely uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the ski retreat, I did want to create that environment, which is you can take it at your own pace. No one's going to force you to do anything. If you're just learning, it's the perfect place to come because you can come back to the cabin. You can talk about your experience. You talk about your falls. You can cry. You can talk about the hot ski instructor, whatever you want. And so it really is a lovely environment to learn that. We have people who come who are like expert skiers and some who've never ever skied. So of course I always recommend those who've never skied to do lessons. And it's just this cool thing because they're learning something new. And as an adult, we all know that's hard.
Yeah, we've talked about that a handful of times for sure, of just learning something new as an adult. And like you said, the idea behind the retreat is not like we're coming here just to ski. Otherwise, then people may be separated into their own groups of ability levels or whatnot. So obviously, whether you're expert skier, beginner skier, like you found this retreat because you wanted like this, the person was looking for more of a connection. So I think that's awesome. And that's just something with different retreats that every retreat has its own thing. And so to be able to create that, like this, the ski retreat's about the connection, and yeah, we're gonna ski. Like,
Yeah. And it's
oh, go ahead.
funny
Sorry.
because it's like it's a random mix, right? Like it's like we one of the best things that we do from my perspective is we bring in a female entrepreneur to speak to the group in person, a literal fireside chat, and they talk kind of how we're talking now about their journey. And I always theme the conversation around the more you fall, the more you learn, because that's what my family told me growing up when I was skiing. And so anytime any of us would fall, they'd say, okay, what'd you learn? And so that can be applied to business, to skiing, to anything you're learning in your life. And so this weekend is such a mishmash of weird stuff. It's like we do something artsy, we do skiing, we have this female entrepreneur, but literally it's my perfect weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm like, if I would like this, I feel like other people would like it too. And it does facilitate, that connection and the fun. I always say it's rejuvenating, but not relaxing, because we do wake up early and we're kind of full, from bell to bell type of thing, but it's so awesome in that way.
Absolutely. And I love that you said, it's like your perfect weekend. So it's like, oh, other people have got to want to do this too, because that's just kind of how I've started to do things myself as well. Like, I often do feel like an anomaly, a complete anomaly. I'm like, what is wrong? Like, no one else like does this or does that, or why do I have this problem or that problem? Like, why can't I find my like twin flame or something? I feel so alone at times. But then again, I'm like, oh, well, this is just when I'm maybe having a pity party or something. I'm like, no, there's absolutely other people out there who want to do the things I want to do or have the same struggles or anything. But most of the time it comes to the point where if I start to feel like kind of lonely or anything, it's like, oh, no one likes to do the things that I like to do. It's like, no, there's plenty. And that also was the stem of this podcast, of like the things that we have to talk about like are going to resonate with people. Like who knows, but it's the people who it resonates with will find us, and they will find you in the ski retreat. The people who it's going to make a difference to and that are really going to connect with it are going to find it. And it's going to be their perfect weekend too.
Yeah, ideally. But
Yeah.
that is something you bring up a good point, because I think any entrepreneurial journey, you go through those emotions of, oh, I'm not getting any signups. Oh my gosh, this is a failure. Or, oh, like people are like, it's too expensive. And then you're like, should I lower the price? Even though I don't make money on these
Yeah.
so far, and so you just have to be gung ho on your vision and mission and just trust that people will kind of be attracted to it. But I mean, here I am 5 years later. And frankly, I've never, worked on it full time, which is what I intend and hope to do. And I think that that'll put some fuel behind it. But it's sort of like slowly grown. But I am kind of amazed every season where people reach out and they say, hey, I Googled you. I'd love to come on this trip. And they're from Nashville and DC and Austin, and they're from all over. I'm like, how did you find this? This is so cool. And those who it resonates with, it like really resonates with. And I think for me, I'm not trying to like grow it super fast, inorganically or anything like that. I really do want it to have that true I don't know, calling to the people who want to come on it, because then also it makes the experience while you're there so much better.
Absolutely. So when you first planned the first one, you had your website and your postcards. Did you have like did you rent a place or find a place first, or did you kind of just like you throw down the money, I'm gonna reserve this place and I sure hope people show up?
Yep, that was it. Well, like I said, I work really well personally with these like things to work backwards from. So if there's something that I put out there, like I will hit it, you know. So I challenge myself in those ways where it's like, okay, create this crazy goal that seems impossible, but somehow, some way, you know, you accomplish it, even with a lot of tears.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. The first one was sort of a shot in the dark because for me, I sort of work backwards from like a vision of what I want it to look like. And with at least the way that the ski retreat looks today, it's really important for us to all be in the same cabin for me because I really want to emulate, again, my perfect ski weekend, which is where you're all in the same cabin. You ski all day, you're tired, you make food together, you kind of hang around, you have good conversations, you play games. Like that is when my heart is the fullest, is like when I have those weekends. So that's why the house was really important. And that's still to this day the hardest part of, I think, the retreat is finding the right accommodation for everyone because it needs to be very specific for me. It needs a long table where we can all eat. I love the open concept of kitchen to living room. It needs a space where we can hang out around the fire. It needs enough different types of room situations to fit a group of 8 to 10 people. So it takes me hours, but I have finally found kind of that model. And I've been lucky enough to find like a couple houses that I can rent the same over and over again. But so yeah, I just kind of booked a date and then did whatever I could to get the word out, mostly through friends and asking them to ask their friends. And in the beginning, and it's still really hard for me. And I think a lot of, especially women, struggle with this is it's really hard to ask for help, right? It's really hard to put yourself out there. And it's so random because I'm a marketer and I'm a salesperson in my career. So I will sell the shit out of or market the shit out of this like tech product. But when it came to marketing the ski retreat, it's like you're so vulnerable. It's like you're marketing yourself. And then you want to be more humble and you feel like you're bragging. And oh my gosh, it's such a head, you know, it messes with your head.
It's definitely a mind fuck, like 100%. Especially when it's like, yeah, you don't want to feel like you're just talking about yourself, or in the beginning stages, if it's mostly your friends or family who are following you on like the social platforms or wherever you're like pushing it more, then you're just like, oh my God, they're gonna get so annoyed of seeing my shit 5 times a day, every day in all these different ways, that even they will stop following or sharing or something, that you just want to kind of be quiet and hope it just that things appear. But I think often we get in those states. I mean, it's just like having a conversation with your friend about whatever, a relationship or life problem, and you can give them what you think is like the best advice, but then you're like, wait, look in the mirror, I am doing the same exact thing you are and I'm not taking my own advice on it.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is talk to yourself as if you're talking to your best friend. And I don't always remember that, but I think that's just a good reminder to do that because well, I think it's obvious, but it's like we're just such harsh critics on ourselves, you know. And that's where I think too, like having that support network is really important. And you do see who, just like any of your potential customers or whomever with your friends, you see who's like more interested in it and interested in helping rather than others. And I don't take it personally if someone isn't, but it's just like, okay, some are really like passionate about what I'm doing and they think it's super cool and they want to help and they just feel drawn to it in that way. Some don't, and that's fine too. No worries. But it's also those friends too where I'm just so grateful for those friends, you know, who've helped me build this in a way.
Absolutely. So was Tahoe was your first destination then?
Yes. So I lived in San Francisco, so Tahoe, growing up in Tahoe was like inevitable in terms of I knew the mountains really well. And so I felt comfortable taking people to Tahoe. The first few years I had it in Tahoe, and then of course there was COVID, and businesses like Ski Retreat are not conducive to COVID. So that didn't happen. And then I actually, during COVID, I moved around for a couple years in different cities just because I could work in remotely. And come ski season, after COVID, I was living in Denver. So I actually had one retreat in Breckenridge, which was really, really cool to do it in a different location. And ultimately, I would love to have the ski retreat in different locations. I think that would require me being more full time, or if there's, a model, I'm thinking through different models for the ski retreat around having different hosts in different cities. That requires a lot, obviously, trust being one of the things, but potentially employees, and that is just a whole thing. But if anyone out there is interested in being a host, but it'd be so cool.
Yeah,
Amber, send me.
Gosh,
I could do Crystal and Snoqualmie.
Yep.
Heck
You could go up to Mount Baker. Could
Yeah.
set
I
you up
need to
in
know
Glacier.
her a little bit more, but yeah, I've got some homies up here who know Glacier pretty well, and I mean, the people that I'm thinking of are definitely the personality type of it, because you definitely have to be that personality type that's like hype people up and gather the people, and it definitely takes a nichey person. So good job.
Amber's the number one hype girl that I know. So, but
love that.
So with you talking about the houses and being pretty specific of what you wanted, then that's what has to limit you to your numbers, obviously, of how many people can come to the retreat, is how many like rooms are available, or beds rather.
Yeah, with that model it is. And so when I start thinking about, getting more serious about the ski retreat and potentially taking more time to dedicate to it, I'm thinking, the model that I currently have is that Thursday through Sunday people travel in. Maybe the home base will be like a Tahoe area for that type of thing, but obviously people in Tahoe don't really need a place to stay, so they wouldn't participate in the whole thing per se. But I can see other models where we do like day retreats where we're going on an adventure, kind of starting the day and ending the day with some sort of activity or something meaningful, or just one-off events, kind of like evening events. And then the ultimate dream is to actually get a piece of land and build a lodge, as well as some tiny cabins, and just have a home that's a retreat space that becomes year round. It becomes a summer space, and, is for mountain biking or stand-up paddling or hiking. And then, having events there. I call it experiential hospitality is kind of what I've been calling what I'm going for. It's like this, it's really hard to describe. One of the organizations, companies, whatever you want to call it, that's inspired me is called the Joshua Tree House. And it's this couple who, they're designers. They wanted somewhere to go off and have somewhere to design. And they bought this place in Joshua Tree House. And when they weren't there, they started Airbnb it out. And then it became really popular. And so now they do kind of like retreats and stuff there. And they have this beautiful space and they do these retreats. And I just am at my happiest when I'm like hosting people coming together when they're having an experience, like an amazing experience. And so if I could do that in, on a plot of land somewhere, anywhere really, that would be like, I've made it. My life is good.
Yes.
I don't need anything else. So that's the ultimate goal. But there's some fun ideas I have in mind for sort of extending the brand and doing those one-off events. Like one example I'll give you is, are you guys, I don't know if anyone listening is as old as I am, but there used to be this show on TV called MacGyver.
Oh, yes. Well, we know of MacGyver for sure. Yes.
Okay. Just throwing it out there. So MacGyver, for anyone who doesn't know, is this guy. I don't even remember his profession. Maybe he was a spy or something, but you could put him in any situation and he could get out of it. Right. He had the tools and he had the skills. And for me in life, I've always been like, I need to learn all these weird things just in case I'm in this weird situation. Right. And so what the other day I was driving, and I'm living in Lake Tahoe now, and I actually have like snow tires, but I have chains. And then I realized, if I had to put my chains on, could I really do it? And I'm sure I could do it, but I have never done it myself. I have them there just in case. And I was like, you know what? I'm sure I'm not the only one in this scenario. So I was like, it'd be cool to have these events. Yeah, everyone's raising their hand. It'd be great to have these events where women learn these really cool skills that, again, they might learn from a man, their partner, or whomever, or they pay someone to do it or whatever. I want women to have these skills and know them for themselves. And so I want to do an event series that I'm calling Miss MacGyver on
Love
how
it.
to on how to learn these different skills. So maybe it's waxing your skis or your snowboard, or maybe it's putting on your chains, or maybe it's chopping wood, like literally whatever. So that's an example of, where I want to take the ski retreat too, into these kind of like one-off events that are, again, all about supporting women. And there's a ton more that I have in mind. But anyway,
I
fun
love
stuff.
that so much. Miss MacGyver. I will say, yes, for a long time I carried around chains and, lived in Washington in a city where we don't need them, but went to the mountains to ski. And my dad would just mostly always be, do you have your chains? Whatever. I'm like, yeah, but not telling you, I have no fucking clue how to put them on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I don't need them, but yeah, I would just carry them around. I'm like, I'm sure in the moment, I can figure it out, but I'm not gonna practice and I don't need to. And now I just don't have any. But yeah, I've never had to put them on because I've always just been able to rally through. So like it's been fine. But I absolutely feel the same way too about like, oh, I might have to learn how to do this sometime. Or when I go somewhere, when I was traveling like by myself, had my camper and stuff. I mean, I always had like a hatchet, just like random tools. I keep a hammer in my truck now, but that's to open the trash cans. That the latch gets stuck. I saw someone pulling out we have like a community, like just dumpsters at the end of our road, that's where we all have to dump. We don't have actually like trash service here, and so the latch is like stuck, and I see a guy pull a hammer out of his truck to open the latch. Just like, that's the trick. So hammer stays in my truck just for the trash. But like that would just be so cool because I've also always been obsessed with the women's nights. Like this happens more, I feel like, in the summer, of bike mechanic nights where you go and you can learn how to change a tire, lube up your chain, or do whatever. And they didn't happen obviously as much for the last couple of years. And there was one this year, I think Dames of Dirt put it on, their local women's mountain bike group. I was so bummed I missed it because for years and years and years I've wanted to do one and I never get to do them. And some of this stuff I know how to do, and I learned how to do it just by getting on YouTube and doing it myself. But again, it comes to that connection. I'm like, if I'm gonna go, if I like to do this shit myself, but I want to go to a night and like I'm gonna learn something new, maybe I'll figure out how to get faster at it. And if the other women that are here are like have the interest in learning how to do it, I'm going to connect with them on that level, that they aren't the damsel in distress. And if you are, like, more power to you. I mean, my mom was like, nope, your dad does everything, I don't touch the dirt. Like no, he'll change my tire, and I'm like, nope, I'll go change it. I don't know how I became that, but I've just been so interested in it, and I would 100% go to all of those events possible. Yeah, let's just see some ladies who want to go split wood, and it ends up being like actually a CrossFit class or something in the woods.
Well, that's part of the thought, where it's almost like each one will have more of a theme, right? That one's a little more just like workout focused, where it's like, okay, we're going to get a workout, so what are the things we can do and learn while we're getting a workout, or
right.
But you hit the nail on the head. I think for me, with these types of things, anything with ski retreat related, it's all about that community, because you can do it on your own watching YouTube, but it's so much more fun when like you're with other people doing the same thing. It's the same thing as going to like a ceramics class, or just a class where you're doing things all together, even a workout class, right? It's just, there's different energy when you're all learning something together, and you can kind of like laugh about it, or maybe you won't even maybe you will fail at putting on your chains, but you learn something.
Yep.
Right? The more you fall, the more you learn. And then you have like a glass of wine afterwards, and it's all good. So
yeah, exactly. Like you said, things are just better most of the time with other people. I mean, there's plenty of times I work out alone or spin alone. It's just the time that I have, and it can be easier. But when I go to just as simple as working out, go to a class. I'm like, yes, other people, and something like that. Sometimes it's just simply that there's other people suffering with you. Like, okay, they can push me, but they're also over there dying. Like, this is great, there's just something too.
Misery loves company.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that's just amazing, and I just love those ideas so much. But so with going back to just the beginnings of the ski retreat, as I'm sure as you continue to grow, roadblocks and any kind of just issues are always going to come up. But with your first one, was there anything, because those are the ones where you're like, wow, I could have never guessed. As you go on with time, you might start to figure out, like, expect, I guess, or anticipate some issues you might have. But with the first ones, you can just be like blindsided of like, oh my God, that's something I never would have thought of happening. Now, how do I deal with it? Did you have any major things or complications like that with the first ski retreat?
Yeah, within the first couple, I mean, of course. And even still today, I'm like, oh gosh, there's been a couple crazy things over the course of, doing this. And in the beginning, one of them was I usually use Instacart to get all the food. And Tahoe is a pretty remote place and sometimes there's weather. And so one time I ordered through Instacart and they called and told me they couldn't deliver the food. And this is like, for me, food is another big part of the retreats. Like, it's always really healthy. It's always really good. There's a lot of it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, because it's just me. So I don't have time to like run to the Safeway and go do a full shop, And so I was on the phone with them and they eventually found someone to come like deliver some food. And you know what is amazing? What came of that was these two badass chicks were the ones who picked up this order and they came and delivered and they're like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, oh, this is the ski retreat. And they're like, no way. And so one of them had just started something called, oh gosh, Venturing Out, I think, where she does snowshoe adventures out here in Tahoe, where you do a snowshoe adventure. She does lunch like in a jar. And then you just are out in nature all day and it's like amazing. And I remember being like, that is the coolest thing. And we've kept in touch ever since. And so that was
so
a beautiful
awesome
thing that came from, this disaster. That's just one of the things. And then most recently, a weird thing happened where I had booked a house on, I think, Airbnb. And, one of the guests, rightfully so, potentially, was dubious of the ski retreat. It's this like online business. Is this really a thing? And so she was really wanted to, I talked to her on the phone multiple times and sort of tried to help make her understand I'm a real person and I'm not, this will be a thing. It's going to be awesome. But, she asked for the link to the Airbnb. So I sent it to her and she actually ended up contacting the host. And which is like kind of not okay because the sometimes you're not supposed to have quote events at these places, whatever. It's actually fine, but anyway. So turns out the host was like, no, that's not the person who's booked that weekend. And so she was like, oh, this is totally fake. And she tells me, and I was like, this is so weird. Yes, I do. And so the woman actually emailed me and said, I accidentally double booked you for this house. So she's like, I'm going to have to cancel yours because the other people booked first. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to scramble. This is like probably a month before. So I had some time, but like I said, the house is really important. I have to find the perfect house, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I took hours and hours and hours finding this new house. But what's interesting is if she wasn't so, dubious of the ski retreat, I never would have known. And can you imagine just showing up that day and someone else is there? It would have been a complete disaster. So that now I'm like really like nervous where I'm like, okay, I have to trust that's actually booked. Like I needed to like triple check with them. And so funnily enough, all these like crazy things turn into good things, but they're scary. And I'm still waiting for like a big disaster. Like I'm not naive. Like I'm a super planner and I hope that anything that I put together, I've thought through all the things, but sometimes you just can't control the situation. So those are two examples. And that last one was just last year. So
wow,
it's not like you're just beginning. It's like, I think continually, as we know, as entrepreneurs, like things are going to happen and you're going to have to pivot and you're just going to have to make the most of it, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, that pivot has been like the key word of the world for the last 2 years, right? Everyone has had to pivot in their
Mhm.
lives, whether that's just for anything, just working from home, schooling from home, different jobs, losing the job, so many things. But I think it's taught a lot of people who weren't used to. So like maybe as an entrepreneur or just a flexible person, you've been used to pivoting or you can do it easily. But now I feel like so many more people are like on their toes and ready to do it. And it doesn't have to be just like a just destroyer of all things. Like, nope, wait, hold on, I can get it. And like you said, these things that happen at first are probably like, oh my gosh, like what this is awful, this isn't good, but they turn out to be blessings in disguises. And not obviously not all of them will end up to be that. Some things will just happen and it'll be shit and it will suck and it will just not be good. But
Yeah.
you said, not being naive and just knowing that things could happen and just being
Will
ready,
happen.
always
Yeah.
ready to have something else in store. I will tell you that you can always call me if you need some Instacarting. You're in Tahoe and you're like, oh God, I can't get groceries. I'd be happy to rally to the store and pick stuff up for you and deliver
Thank
it.
you.
I actually did some Instacarting last year in the winter, and one of the jobs was, it was like during a storm, and was going like, I had my boyfriend actually come with me and take his truck just because it was a little bit bigger too. We could fit more stuff. And I'm like, I got to go way up in like Carnelian Bay, like the top of Dollar Hill, or just somewhere that I knew the neighborhoods were going to be not fun. That I was like, if I get stuck or anything, I just want to have someone else with me. And then the people weren't even there when I showed up. I was like, what? Like, where are you?
That's
Like, why
weird.
would you do this? Yeah, they gave me like $100 cash tip after making me wait and then driving in the terrible weather. But I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I don't mind doing this. Like, I kind of would rather be out there doing it than some other people like on the roads.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
yeah, totally. Well, so we've talked about kind of a little bit about where you see the future of the ski retreat with, or I guess alluding to some things with your possible little kind of side things with Miss MacGyver or day trips or whatever it may be. So what else would you like? What are the grand ideas of this ski retreat? Would this be like, is your idea to get to doing this full time and transitioning out of your current career?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? Well, ideally $1 million question, but that'll take a while. But that's what we were kind of alluding to earlier is this year was a bit of a turning point for me just emotionally, I think, where yeah, I've been in my career in corporate America for over a decade for sure. And um I can just start feeling where, the passion for the ski retreat is definitely overcoming the passion for that side. And so it's like, how do you reconcile that in your mind? I'm in a great position. If I'm to be in corporate America, I'm doing the job that I would love. I have an amazing team, but I'm finding sometimes I'm a little bit resentful that that is taking up more of my time than the ski retreat, right? Where I wake up and the thing that actually makes me excited is the ski retreat. And so I feel grateful that I even get to work on it at times. But it's like a nights and weekends situation, right? And so it's like, I've been working on getting out a newsletter for like a month, which is
Yeah.
kind of sad excuse, because I could just bang it out if I do an all nighter and if I don't go skiing, if I don't do all the things I love or whatever. But it's just that crazy balance. And so I'm finding it harder and harder to balance that with my job. And so it's tough because obviously, it's steady income, like for you, Taryn, where it's like your journey from going from entrepreneur to wanting that makes a lot of sense because that's our livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about, okay, what would it take to actually take that leap? I don't actually know the answer yet. I think
Mm-hmm.
I listen to a lot of these stories of women taking the leap and it's all different for them, right? It's either a forcing function or something that was unexpected. Like they were laid off and it's like, well, here I go. Or they have a baby and they're just like, yeah, now's the time. Or they feel like they have enough in their savings account to safely make the leap. And so I think I'm like a mix of all of those things where I want to make sure I'm sort of financially okay, but that requires life changes, right? You have to, I would have to make some life changes. Like I can't ski all the time and I can't travel and I can't go out to eat, And so, but I've just started feeling like that's going to be worth it to actually make this a reality. So the big dream has to do with that property, of having the lodge and having the little cabins and turning that into just a whole space and basically living there, eventually hopefully raising kids on that and that being just the rest of my life working on that. And so that would be sort of like the home base. And then if I could do, who knows what it'll turn into. It's already grown and changed in different ways than when I started it. And I'm so open to that. I love sort of not knowing where it's going to go. And I think that's just something that I've learned about myself or just about what it takes to start something is being okay with not knowing the end goal. I used to be such a perfectionist or, I had to know what it was going to look like. And now I've totally flipped that mindset of I actually don't want to know.
Yeah.
And what Oprah has this amazing saying that I always think about, which is just take what's the next right step. You don't have to know the fifth step from now. Just take the next right step, the next best step, whatever it is. And that was how she took her journey. And obviously look at her now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I could be like Oprah, great.
100%.
And she didn't overthink it. She couldn't have imagined where she is today. And so that's what makes it exciting. And that's where it's like, it does keep the excitement alive. Because I think in corporate America, you know damn well what it's going to look like in 10 years. It's going to look the same. You're going to be at a desk. You're going to have stress in the team, and so that's like the blessing and the curse of an entrepreneurial journey is like, it could be anything, but that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
That's amazing that you mentioned, it doesn't have to be, there's no end goal per se. Because as we talked about before we started recording is, again, something Amber and I have talked about a few times is life is just isn't linear. And we're taught that, right? It's like, go to school, you start at point A, you get to point B, and that's kind of it. But then you learn out of high school that maybe you don't want to go straight to college, or even if you do go straight to college, most of my friends who did and got their degree in 4 years are not doing anything with that degree. They went into working in any other industry, and now maybe they've created a career out of that. It's awesome that they have that option and a degree or anything, or they can create something from that later. But it's just like, yeah, why? Maybe they would have never gone to school at all in the first place, but it was like, nope, this is what you're supposed to do. And it may be like, I'm going to go from A to Z to B to C and back to Z, like Amber mentioned. And that's kind of how I feel my life has been, for sure. I did want to say your dream about the property is like, that's exactly what I had envisioned when we were looking for our property. Not on this property, but like a property, because I'm still like, I need my personal space. But we looked at a space, we're like, oh, well, Andrew could do snowmobile tours in the winter. Donovan could cook. I'll do yoga. Like, we can bike in the summer. Like, everyone of the family had a job. Like, the whole family's just going to come to this compound and we'll have a little B&B out here. And yeah, people can have like weddings or something like that. But I think
dream.
That's just an amazing idea. And like you said, then the family and like raising kids or something out there, it becomes something that is truly a part of you. And that being your business just at all, and having that feeling of you do want your business to be a part of you, I think it is important. Like, you don't need your business to become you, but I think it being a true part of yourself is important for its success when it's something that you're undertaking yourself.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and you have to care about it, right? As soon as you lose care for it, unless you're one of these super rich like CEOs who just is raking in the billions of dollars, like, and doesn't care what happens in his business, like, cool, good for you. But also, those are the people that only care about the money and don't really care about the business or what it's doing to the world.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like a whole nother tangent, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just, like you said, just doesn't have to be an end goal as long as you're taking that, just that next step that's right for you at that moment. Is like, it feels like sometimes you take one step forward and 10 steps back, but sometimes that's
Yeah.
just what has to happen to get to that right next step.
Exactly. Per Oprah, per
Yeah,
the
yeah,
almighty Oprah's words.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I love, so like for anyone out there, I love collaborating. I love partnering. Of course, we have, women come to the retreat who are the speakers or the makers or the instructors. And so I just want to meet people who are also on their own journey. I get so inspired by hearing their stories. And so obviously reach out. I'm at the ski retreat on Instagram, and the skiretreat.co is the website if you want to like check it out. But it's been really fun, and I just look forward to doing more of it. It's just brings me joy every time I work on something for it. So yeah, it's exciting.
I love that. And just like you said, I mean, that's why we're here today, is just to be able to share your story so that we can have, like, foster those connections for people, share the stories, inspire people, motivate people to get out there and either, continue working on their side project or start their side project, or support someone else's side project. You don't always have to be out starting your own business to feel like, successful or anything. You can easily be, like you kind of mentioned. I mean, right now our paths are a bit opposite. I had just started my business and did that for a few years, and I was like, I need some stability and a little break from just the hustle. I'm like burnt out. And so I went to full-time employment, and now my business has become that side hustle, and I'm trying to find that balance too between both of them and figure out how you wrap it all into one without just burning the candle at both ends constantly. And I think that many of us deal with that throughout our lives, whether it's just through motherhood, through life in general, like you're momming, or you're working and schooling, or just working and living.
Just being a person in general.
Yeah, just being a person.
Personing.
Yes, human being, all of it. But yeah, it's like, so just sharing stories and making it more relatable to people, because also, like we mentioned before we started recording, is I do this a lot. I've gotten a little bit better about it, but seeing someone, especially over the last 2 years, who decided like they're going to start their own business, and maybe they got laid off, or maybe they had some savings, and then from the internet it seems like, wow, they're doing it and they're making it big, but it's like, nope, they're still maybe only doing it a couple hours from 10 p.m. to midnight, and they're, working their butt off to make it a reality. It's not just like, yeah, they have all the time in the world to put every ounce of their being into it. And like I said, I have to remind myself of that sometimes, is that it looks like and maybe it's because they're getting more likes or comments or something, I don't know. And it's just like, no, none of that really matters. And you just don't really know what someone else is doing or going through, or how much they're putting into it, or how much they put into it before. Like you said, if this year you're able to put more into it or something than you had in the past 5 years, like that, yeah, many people might not know how much you've done it for 5 years. Like, oh wait, it took you, yeah, some time to get to where you're at. It wasn't just like one and done. It was a hit.
Yeah, and when it's you, there's always like so much more you could be doing, right, in your own mind.
Yep.
But yeah, the reality is just whatever the reality is.
You got to be able to give back to yourself, have some quality time in with you, do yoga, because it's whenever you do something where you're like giving and putting out into the world, you have to reel it back in every once in a while and be like, okay, me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, me.
Yep. And that's what the ski retreat weekend seems like it's perfect for, is those times that you're like, you know what, I need some me time. I need to hang out with some other people, get away, just like be able to just connect instead of be in my own head. With that, so what do you have coming up this year?
So far, we have a retreat in January, the 19th through the 22nd. And then some of those events that I talked about, in the works for the locals here. And so that's it so far. It's kind of one of those things where I kind of have to see how it goes. In fact, it's really poor timing with my current job. We have a big event in April and my team's big for that. So it's like really bad time for ski season. I'm like, can't you change this? Don't you know this is ski season? But anyway, so I do what I can, kind of to our earlier points. You do what you can and you keep it going. I think the most important thing for me is just keeping it going, doing at least one a season if I can. And then it's been sort of on the back end of changing the look and feel a little bit, and then these other ideas that I'm kind of passionate about. That's how I'm thinking about expanding it eventually too. I like to do some corporate retreats. I think for someone in my shoes, I understand what the value would be to do something like this through my job. So my jobs haven't really offered that, and I don't know why, and so I think it'd be great to offer that to other people in a corporate environment.
And it does seem like in the corporate world that they're starting to get a little bit better, at least some, maybe not as big corporations, but the smaller ones, of the importance of mental health and exercise and things like that, where coming to them with a corporate event option would definitely spark interest in them, where like they bring it to their team. Hey, look, we've got this opportunity for you. Instead of just like, hey, here's a gym pass for a week, but oh yeah, no one actually, or for a month or what year, whatever, but no one uses it. They just use it for insurance purposes or something, like get a better deal because they have the gym membership. But yeah, hopefully we start seeing a better like a turn of things in corporations of accepting the fact people need time to themselves and time to connect with others outside of work, and it makes them more
employees.
More what?
Better employees.
Yeah, better, more productivity. That's what I'm looking for. Yes. Like ups the productivity and whatnot. So January 19th, is that one in Tahoe then?
Yep.
And
yeah, it is.
Is it full or what? Can people still sign up?
Yeah, they can. We still have 2 spots left if people are so interested. I'd love to we have what seems like an amazing group so far. I'm so excited. Again, they're all like super passionate about it and excited to come. And so it's going to be really fun. And we have Allie Conway, the founder of Strange Bikinis, coming to speak, which is also very exciting. She's so awesome. So it's going to be super fun. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that would be so cool. I'd love to just hear her speak. I've heard her speak at I think it was a Wild Women event over the summer. And yeah, again, just inspiring stories.
The 22nd is the Lunar New Year. Are you going to do anything to incorporate that?
Well, now that I know.
Yeah, right?
I totally.
Set the dates. And so I looked at my calendar and I was like, ooh, Lunar New Year. Because my girlfriends and I, we usually do something for Galentine's Day weekend. And I was like, oh, that's close to Galentine's Day weekend. So yeah.
That would be awesome. There you go. Now you got another idea for it.
Year of the Rabbit.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's right. You're the rabbit.
Yeah.
And I'm really big on the moon, so that makes sense.
Love it. Well, yeah, if there's anyone out there who, because we have listeners all over from Washington to Tahoe. But yeah, come to Tahoe or tell your friends if you know someone who needs something like this, then tell them about the ski retreat. There's 2 spots left and it's going to be amazing. I just know it.
It is. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, Charlotte mentioned you could find her at the ski retreat on Instagram and the skiretreat.co on for her website. You can reach out to her those ways, find her contact if you have any more questions about it. And we will link that stuff in the show notes too. So people can find it that way. Before we sign off, is there anything else you want to leave us with, Charlotte?
Ooh. No,
okay.
This is so fun. Thank you.
Yes,
just thank you for. I'm feeling so much gratitude for today in particular for whatever reason this is a part of it. So yes, thank you everyone. Thank you universe. Thank you world.
Yes,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much for being on with us today and sharing your story about the ski retreat. And we're super excited to just continue to see how it grows too. And because I, for one, am very amped on your ideas for starting out local with the little side events and whatnot. So I'll 100% be sharing those and hopefully being able to attend many of them myself too. And hopefully we can get Amber down here as well to come check them out as well. And then maybe you'll do something up in Washington.
Yeah, that'd be
Maybe.
tight.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, goodbye to all the listeners out there, and we'll chat again with you soon. We hope you enjoyed this episode and would do us a huge favor, since we don't have any sponsors or anything like that, and would rate and review us on whatever platform it is you use, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is. And if you're listening and downloading just through the website, tearingituppodcast.com, leave comments. We'll definitely engage back with you. And on social media right now, we're just on Instagram. Tearing It Up Podcast is the handle. Like the post, share the post, comment on the post, whatever it is you got. Show us your love so we just stay relevant and show up in the rankings at all. So again, rate and review, please, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.